You know that moment when everything is quiet, but your brain suddenly opens a file from 3 years ago? You're brushing your teeth, walking to class, lying in bed, doing something completely normal. And then, there it is. That thing you said. That awkward message. That one decision you wish you could undo. That moment where you think, why did I act like that? Nobody else is talking about it. Nobody else is bringing it up. In fact, there's a good chance nobody else even remembers it. But your body reacts like it is happening again. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, your face gets warm, you start mentally rewriting the scene. I should have said this. I should have noticed that. I should have known better. And maybe the most exhausting part is not the mistake itself. It's that you can understand, logically, that the past is over, but emotionally, your mind keeps walking back into the room. So before we call this weakness, let's clear something up. You are not broken because your brain keeps replaying old mistakes. You are not dramatic because one memory still stings. And you are not childish because you struggle to forgive a version of yourself who was doing the best they could with the awareness they had at the time. Stay with this, because the goal is not to pretend the past does not matter. The goal is to understand why your mind keeps returning to it, and how to stop turning memory into punishment. What you are experiencing is often called rumination, the mental loop where your brain keeps replaying, analyzing, judging, and trying to solve something that already happened. But here's what most people miss. Your brain is not replaying the past just to torture you. It is usually trying to protect you from repeating pain, rejection, embarrassment, or loss. The problem is that protection can become a prison. And this connects directly to something we'll unpack next: why a tiny mistake can feel enormous in your body, even when your logical mind knows it was not that serious. But first, let's slow this down and look at what is really happening under the replay. Let's take the loop apart piece by piece, because once you understand the pattern, it becomes much easier to interrupt it. Number 1. Your brain treats unfinished emotion like unfinished business. It looks like this. A memory pops up, and suddenly you are back inside it. You replay the conversation. You scan your tone. You imagine how the other person saw you. You look for the exact second where everything went wrong. Maybe you tell yourself, I'm just trying to learn from it. And sometimes that is true. But wait, here's the strange part. Learning usually feels clear. Rumination feels sticky. Learning says, okay, next time I'll do this differently. Rumination says, let's watch the same emotional movie again, but this time with more shame. Why does this happen? Because the brain is wired to remember emotionally charged experiences. If something made you feel rejected, embarrassed, unsafe, or exposed, your nervous system tags it as important. It says, do not forget this. This mattered. That does not mean the event was actually life-ending. It means your body experienced it as meaningful. The cost is that your mind starts confusing remembering with repairing. You think, maybe if I analyze this one more time, I'll finally feel better. But the loop rarely gives closure. It gives more evidence for self-blame. The small switch is this: when the memory appears, ask, is there a lesson here? Or am I just reopening the wound? A lesson is usually short. A wound wants endless attention. Name the lesson in one sentence. Then stop negotiating with the loop. Not because the past does not matter, but because you have already extracted the information. Number 2. Your mind believes self-punishment prevents future mistakes. This one is subtle. It looks like being harsh with yourself because you think kindness will make you careless. You tell yourself, I need to remember how stupid that was, so I never do it again. Or, if I let myself off the hook, I'll become the kind of person who doesn't care. Here's what most people miss. Shame often disguises itself as responsibility. It says, I am helping you grow. But real responsibility helps you repair. Shame keeps you frozen. Why does this happen? For some people, especially those who grew up around criticism, pressure, emotional unpredictability, or high expectations, self-attack can start to feel normal. The brain learns, if I punish myself first, maybe other people won't. If I stay hyper-aware of my flaws, maybe I can avoid being judged. So the replay becomes a defense system. Before the world can accuse you, you accuse yourself. Before someone else can reject you, you reject yourself first. The cost is huge. You may become more careful, but less free. You may become more thoughtful, but also more afraid. You may apologize too much, explain too much, or avoid trying new things because any mistake feels like proof that something is wrong with you. And the wild part is, self-punishment does not actually make people more accountable. It often makes them more anxious. The switch is to separate guilt from shame. Guilt says, I did something I don't like. Shame says, I am someone I don't like. One can guide growth, the other attacks identity. So instead of saying, I'm so stupid for doing that, try, that was not my best moment, and I can still choose what kind of person I become after it. That sentence is not an excuse. It is a repair path. Number 3. Your brain wants a perfect explanation for an imperfect moment. It looks like asking questions that have no final answer. Why did I say that? Why didn't I notice sooner? What if they still think about it? What if that one mistake changed everything? You are not just remembering. You are trying to build a courtroom in your mind. You gather evidence. You cross-examine yourself. You replay the scene from every angle. But here's where it gets weird. Sometimes the brain prefers a painful explanation over uncertainty. Because, I ruined everything, feels awful. But at least it feels certain. Uncertainty says, maybe it mattered, maybe it didn't, maybe they noticed, maybe they forgot. For an anxious mind, that open space can feel unbearable. So the brain chooses a conclusion, even if the conclusion hurts. Why does this happen? Humans are meaning-making machines. When something painful happens, the mind tries to create a story. The problem is that when you are emotionally activated, the story often becomes extreme. A small awkward moment becomes, I always mess things up. A bad decision becomes, I can't trust myself. A misunderstanding becomes, people will leave when they see the real me. The cost is that one event becomes a life sentence. You stop seeing the mistake as a moment. You start seeing it as evidence. Evidence that you are not good enough. Evidence that you are behind. Evidence that everyone else is more normal, more confident, more in control. But that is not truth. That is your nervous system writing a dramatic script while scared. The switch is to practice incomplete closure. Say, I may never know exactly how they saw it. I may never get the perfect explanation. But I can stop using uncertainty as a reason to punish myself. This is powerful because healing often starts when you stop demanding a perfect answer from a messy human moment. And this is also where next video's idea begins to appear, for some people. The size of the reaction is not about the size of the mistake. It is about what the mistake seems to mean. We'll come back to that. Number 4. You are replaying the past because your present feels unsafe. This one is easy to miss. Sometimes the mind does not replay old mistakes because the past is so important. It replays them because the present is quiet enough for buried emotion to rise. It looks like getting hit with regret at night, or after a stressful day, or when you are alone, or when you finally stop scrolling and there is nothing to distract you. Suddenly, your mind says, let's revisit every embarrassing thing you've ever done. It feels random, but it often is not. Here's what most people miss. The brain uses familiar pain when it does not know what to do with current discomfort. Maybe today you felt ignored. Maybe you felt behind. Maybe you felt judged. Maybe you felt uncertain about the future. But instead of naming today's feeling, your brain pulls up an old mistake that carries the same emotional flavor. Old embarrassment, old rejection, old regret. Why does this happen? Because memory is not stored like a neat timeline. It is connected by emotion. A present feeling can activate a past scene, not because the scene is happening again, but because your body recognizes the emotional pattern. The cost is that you may try to fix the wrong problem. You spend an hour analyzing something from years ago, when what you actually need is rest, reassurance, food, movement, a conversation, or a break from pressure. The switch is to ask, what am I feeling right now that this memory is trying to explain? Not, what is wrong with me? Not, why can't I get over it? But, what is happening in my body right now? Maybe the answer is loneliness. Maybe it is stress. Maybe it is fear of disappointing someone. Maybe it is exhaustion. Once you name the present feeling, the old memory often loses some of its power. Because now you are dealing with today instead of fighting a ghost. Number 5. Your sensitivity is not the enemy, it is an untrained superpower. This is the reframe most overthinkers need to hear. The same mind that replays mistakes is often the same mind that notices details, senses emotional shifts, cares about impact, and wants to do things well. That is not nothing. You may be someone who reflects deeply, someone who learns from experience, someone who does not want to hurt people, someone who wants to become better instead of pretending nothing matters. That is a strength. But here's the part that changes everything. A strength without boundaries can become suffering. Empathy without boundaries becomes absorbing everyone's reaction. Responsibility without boundaries becomes blaming yourself for everything. Self-awareness without boundaries becomes constant self-surveillance. The cost is that you start living like every moment is being graded. You become afraid to speak freely, afraid to be seen learning, afraid to be a beginner, afraid to be human in public. And the wild part is, the people who worry most about being careless are often the least careless people in the room. The switch is to give your sensitivity a job. Instead of letting it investigate the past forever, direct it toward repair and growth. Ask, is there anything kind, clear, or useful I can do now? Maybe the answer is apologize once. Maybe it is change a habit. Maybe it is write down the lesson. Maybe it is simply stop turning one mistake into your identity. That is the difference between reflection and rumination. Reflection moves you forward. Rumination keeps you circling the same emotional block. And when you learn that difference, you do not become less caring. You become more free. Imagine someone named Maya. Maya is in a group chat after school. Everyone is joking. The conversation is moving fast. She sends a message that sounds funny in her head. But the second it lands, the chat goes quiet for a few minutes. No one attacks her. No one says anything cruel. Later, someone changes the topic. But Maya's brain does not move on. That night, she lies in bed and replays it. Was it rude? Did they think I was weird? Why did I send that? Should I text and explain? What if they talk about it tomorrow? By morning, the message has become bigger than the entire day. At breakfast, she is not really tasting her food. On the way to class, she keeps checking her phone. When she sees two people laughing in the hallway, part of her wonders if it is about her. Now, from the outside, someone might say, it was just one text. Forget it. But inside Maya's body, it does not feel like one text. It feels like exposure. It feels like the possibility of rejection. It feels like proof that she should monitor every word before she sends it. Then something small changes. Instead of asking, why am I like this? She asks, what am I afraid this mistake means? And the answer is not, I sent a bad message. The answer is, I'm afraid people will decide I'm too much. That is the real wound. So Maya does one grounded thing. She checks the facts. Nobody confronted her. Nobody removed her. One person sent her a normal message later. The group moved on. Then she writes one sentence in her notes, next time, I can pause before joking in a group chat. That is the lesson. Then she writes a second sentence. This does not mean I am unlikable. That is the repair. The memory does not disappear instantly. But it gets smaller. Because now it is not a monster. It is a moment. And moments can be learned from. So here is the reframe. You do not keep thinking about past mistakes because you are weak. You keep thinking about them because your brain is trying to protect your belonging, your identity, and your future. But protection becomes harmful when it never updates. So try this tiny action today. Pick one mistake your mind keeps replaying. Write 3 lines. 1. What happened? Keep it factual. 2. What did I learn? Keep it short. 3. What does this not mean about me? That third line matters. Because a mistake can mean, I need to communicate better. It does not have to mean, I am impossible to love, respect, or trust. You are allowed to become wiser without becoming cruel to yourself. For the next 24 hours, when an old mistake pops up, say, lesson, not life sentence. Drop a comment with one word. What does your mind replay most? Embarrassment, regret, guilt, or rejection? And if this kind of clarity helps, you'll like what we do here. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because it connects directly to this: why small mistakes feel huge to you. I'll meet you there in the next video.